I'm Mike Reese, Chief of Police for the Portland Police Bureau. We've seen a troubling trend in Portland and throughout the state regarding prescription medicine abuse. Prescription drug abuse rates have increased dramatically in Oregon over the last 10 years. This trend has caused an increase in our fatal overdoses. Young people like you are especially vulnerable to this trend, perhaps in part because of the misperception many kids have that these drugs are safer than other, more illicit drugs. The availability of these types of drugs has also increased as doctors prescribe more medication. Studies show that the majority of young people using prescription medication get them from family members within their own home or from friends. Our officers respond to the tragic fatal overdoses that claim lives and destroy families with increasing frequency. It is our hope that educating young people to the dangers of this drug abuse trend can help improve this situation and save lives.
Have you or someone you know recently had surgery?
Hey guys, morning.
A doctor probably prescribed a painkiller after the procedure. Oftentimes, the leftover medication is still in the bathroom drawer or medicine cabinet, right? What's the problem with that? Who cares about an old prescription anyways?
Hey, can you tell me where the bathroom is?
Yeah, it's just around the corner.
All right, thanks.
Non-medical use of prescription drugs is the fastest growing drug problem in the United States and has been classified as a national epidemic by the Centers for Disease Control. While some drugs, such as cocaine, have shown reduced usage rates over the last several years, nearly 1/3 of people aged 12 and older who abused drugs for the first time in 2009 began by using prescription drugs for non-medical purposes. Local law enforcement and healthcare providers are very familiar with the dangers of prescription drug abuse. They see the effects of their misuse on a frequent basis and want to make sure others are aware of the danger.
Hey, James?
Yeah.
You showed me something on your arm that you have from drug use. You use heroin, right?
Yeah, it's an abscess.
And that's an abscess? Is that from shooting into your arm right there?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
According to the Drug Enforcement Administration, 1 in 7 teens admit to abusing prescription drugs to get high in the past year. In general, the teens surveyed also reported that they believe prescription drugs are much safer than street drugs and not addictive. 56% of teens surveyed reported prescription drugs were easier to obtain than illegal street drugs such as marijuana, cocaine, or ecstasy. And perhaps most alarming, 63% of teens surveyed reported prescription drugs are easily obtained from friends or family's medicine cabinets. The vast majority of teens and young adults who abuse prescription medication obtain their drugs from a family member or friend. Many of the common prescription drugs we see our teens abusing, such as Adderall, Xanax, Ambien, Ritalin, Vicodin, OxyContin, and Percocet, are coming from our very own medicine cabinets. So what is driving this epidemic and how is it affecting our teens? Meet Dr. Zane Horowitz, Medical Director of the Oregon Poison Center.
In the last few years, the number of prescription drug deaths, which used to be a reasonably low number, has exceeded traffic accident deaths in the United States. Part of it is we're doing better at traffic safety. We wear seatbelts and have airbags, and trauma systems are doing better in reducing those deaths, but at the same time, the number of people who are using prescriptions to get high, to misuse them, are increasing to the point where they're the leading cause of accidental death in the United States.
Prescription drug abuse can begin as early as junior high.
People are trading their ADHD meds, their stimulants. People are trading their sleeping meds that they're on for different reasons, their Ambiens and their Valiums. People are using their Vicodins and their Norcos and their Oxycodones and their Oxycontins, or their parents' pills that they've got for a variety of reasons, or even psychiatric medicines, of which they have no idea how many or any of these work, and mixing them in combinations, sometimes with alcohol at a party where someone gets a few beers and they down a few pills and they trade and swap these for each other, and then suddenly someone passes out.
Prescription opiates or painkillers are a category of drugs that can have especially deadly consequences.
When we used to think of opioids and opiates in the past, we were always thinking heroin overdoses, but in the last maybe 15 years, we've seen a trend towards people using prescription pharmaceuticals, whether they're their own or they're borrowed from a friend or a relative or traded with a schoolmate, and they're using them and they figure, well, a doctor wrote for it, it must be safe, but that's not true. What's implied for somebody with a broken leg as pain control is not going to be safe for somebody who doesn't have a medical problem. And we're seeing, unfortunately, more and more overdose deaths from things like oxycodone and hydrocodone and methadone, all these high-potency narcotics that are opiates, that are painkillers, that are written as prescription, that people are misusing in an effort to, get high legally.
Tragically, this plays out with devastating consequences in our own community. Treatment admissions for prescription drug abuse in Oregon has increased 84% over the last 5 years. And a survey conducted by the Center for Disease Control reports that the prescription drug abuse rate in Oregon is the second highest in the nation. Dominic Morelli was a local teenager whose death is one of the growing number of tragic stories that reflects the deadly effects of prescription drug abuse. Dominic's mother tells his story with the hope that it might impact teens and parents alike.
My son Dominic passed away September 22nd, 2011 from an overdose of heroin and fentanyl.
Dominic was a hard-working young man who most people wouldn't think would have a drug problem.
A lot of people think, when they think of drug users, that they're partiers, that they're out of control, that that's all they do. Dominic was a very, very hard worker, a great student. He was either at work or school or at home.
But Dominic did develop a drug problem, and it started with prescription drugs.
As far as I know, the prescription drugs he was using was Vicodin. That's what he started out with, just taking the pills. And then when he didn't have enough pills to get the same feeling, or he didn't have access to enough of them to get the feeling he wanted, he told me that he would grind them up, and that's when he started doing the needles.
Dominic's prescription drug abuse eventually led to heroin addiction.
The heroin was a lot cheaper, he said, than the pills. He had told me that before. I didn't know that. He relapsed, and I think he went to the heroin. I believe my son's cause of death was his addiction, his initial addiction to prescription drugs that he found in our home. I think that's what killed him.
When you gamble with your life and lose, the devastation is far-reaching and permanent.
I get up early, so does my husband, for work, and we were just doing our thing. My husband got ready for work. I was just about ready, and Dominic wasn't up yet. One of us normally would wake him up in the morning if he wasn't up. And my husband went downstairs where his bedroom was, and he wasn't in his bedroom. He had his dogs in there ready to go to, he always took them to bed, the dogs. So the dogs were in his bedroom, and he was in the bathroom. The bathroom door was locked, and well, it wasn't locked. We couldn't get in the bathroom. And so my husband hollered upstairs to me, "Maggie, come downstairs. Dominic's doing something. He's not answering me, or he's messing with." My husband was upset. So I said, okay, and go downstairs. By the time I got down there, my husband said, this isn't good. He was trying to open the bathroom door, but Dominic had opened a drawer that the door was pushing against. We could just open it a crack. And so Jim pushed the door through, and we both popped our heads in. The first thing I saw was Dominic's feet and his calves. He was laying on the cement floor in this basement bathroom. And my husband made some sound, and he says, oh no. And now I get my head all the way in, and I see him curled on the bathroom floor, and I see some blood or something on the floor by his mouth, and I wanted to get him, and we need to call 911. But my husband is a fireman, and he knew the second he saw him that he was gone, long gone, and pushed me out and said, he's dead, Maggie, he's dead. And then I don't remember too much after that. It was when they say pain brings you to your knees, pain does, it literally brought me to my knees. I remember crawling and making animal sounds, screaming. I remember hearing my husband screaming. I don't remember. I knew I needed to get to our other son. He was upstairs, and I crawled up the stairs. I still have scars on my knees from that. And it was just a whirlwind of guttural sounds coming out of our home. Screaming, just animal. It was like 3 animals wailing at the top of our lungs, and I remember clinging to my youngest son, who he's 15 at the time, Jack, and just holding him, and never have heard sounds like that coming out of him, knowing that his brother was gone. And after that, I don't remember too much. I do remember I never cried tears. It was just beyond tears. There's no words to describe it. None. I know I have heard my whole life there's nothing worse than losing a child, and you kind of go, yeah, I can imagine. You can never imagine. And it is true. No, none of our lives will be the same, ever.
Dominic's story highlights an especially deadly connection between opiate-based prescription painkillers and the more hardcore, street-level drug, heroin. Prescription opiates are very similar in molecular structure to heroin. Abusing opiate painkillers, however, does not have the same stigma attached to it as heroin use, and teens who abuse prescription opiates would never typically see themselves transitioning to a drug like heroin. All too often, however, law enforcement and healthcare providers are seeing an undeniable progression from prescription opiate abuse to heroin use. Sean Maycumber is an officer with the Portland Police Bureau's Drugs and Vice Division. He has many years of experience investigating drug crimes and drug trafficking. He has also been involved in multiple fatal drug overdose investigations and is all too familiar with why people transition from prescription opiates to heroin.
Kids that start off using prescription narcotics, they don't have that mindset that they're using something illicit initially. These are medicines that are prescribed by doctors, so people think initially, this is safe. This is if I just take a couple, I'm not going to be harming myself. But when that physical dependence kicks in with opiates or opiate-style prescriptions, it leads later to the transition to heroin. People don't tell you when you start, relying on the pills that if you stop taking them, that you're going to suffer from withdrawal symptoms such as, extended bouts of diarrhea. You're going to be, people call it getting dope sick for a reason, because you're physically unable to get out of bed. You're sick and you're trying to get off of the drug. And so there's several ways where people try and either stave off the withdrawal symptoms by getting more pills, or if they can't get more pills, then they'll turn back to, what else is going to help me get over these symptoms that I'm feeling, or what's going to get me high again. Because you can build up a maintenance level to where you're not feeling the high effects of the pills anymore. And in order to get high again, you have to use more, or you have to switch to a new substance that has greater potency, i.e. heroin. So by getting to the point in your life where you either run out of your pill supply or you're not getting high anymore, the next step is going to, heroin.
Officer Maycomber explains that prescription opiate addicts very often end up transitioning to heroin because of heroin's cheaper cost and increased potency.
So Vicodin on the street is a very low-level pill. It won't get you high. It may stave off your withdrawal symptoms, whereas OxyContin, which can cost approximately $1 a milligram, compared to the effects that you can get from 1/10 of a gram of heroin for $10 off the street versus $80 of a pill for OxyContin. It's a much cheaper way to either maintain your addiction or to once again try and achieve those impairments that you were getting when you were first using narcotics.
One of my friends brought it over and said it was opium and said, see if we want to try it, and I did, and it was a great high. It was the highest I've ever been, but I've never been able to get back to that point again, and I've just been trying to chase that first high ever since, and it's just taken everything away from me.
What's happened with friends since then? What is your friend situation like?
Well, the ones that went on to a better life, I don't talk to anymore, and the ones that are addicts, I still see occasionally.
Okay. Is it hard to keep friends in this kind of lifestyle? Is it hard to have friends?
You don't have friends in this kind of lifestyle.
And why is that?
Because everyone's stabbing each other in the back.
Officer Maycomber shares what he has learned in dealing with countless heroin addicts who started their addiction with prescription pain pills.
When you go talk to a user of heroin on the street, first of all, I haven't talked to a single one that has told me that they enjoy it anymore, or that they're glad that they first started using heroin. Also, the kids that we're going out and investigating the overdose deaths of, these aren't suicides. They're not using the substance to try and kill themselves. They've gotten addicted to these substances physically, and they need to keep using in order not to get sick. The users that transition over to heroin never think of themselves as a heroin addict. You go and you talk to them, yeah, I started using pills back, a few of my friends were doing it, and I got hooked on them, and I was getting sick, and somebody brought me heroin one day, and I made the switch. It's not something that people think about when they first start using, that this is leading down a road to a physical requirement that I'm going to need this drug in the future, and that I'm going to do things that I never thought I would do, either physically injecting myself with a substance or smoking something off a piece of tin foil. Initially it's just, oh, I'm taking this pill, it's going to make me feel good for a little while. But what it can lead to is that final dose of injecting yourself with a needle, initiating my response to come to your death.
A 2011 Multnomah County Health Department needle exchange survey seems to lend statistical support to Officer Maycomber's professional viewpoint. In the survey, 43% of the respondents who were currently using heroin indicated they began their addiction with prescription painkillers such as Vicodin and OxyContin. Colin Wright was a local professional wakeboarder and snowboarder who was paid for his appearances at various sporting and promotional events. After a back injury, Colin began taking Vicodin as prescribed by his doctor. His story shows in disturbing detail how easy it is for a person to go from all to nothing. Fortunately for Colin, he survived his addiction and continues to work hard to maintain his sobriety. Colin agreed to tell his story, hoping to educate others.
Especially looking back, my high school years and, even into my early 20s, I never thought that I would have any kind of drug addiction. I never thought, because a lot of friends I grew up with and went through high school with, we ended up being the people that used these drugs together. And I wouldn't have thought they were going to become that person either. We all, in high school, I didn't do great in high school. I, admittedly didn't take it that serious. At the time, I was really adamant that I was, going to be a professional athlete and, just thought that things would work their way out. I didn't want to go to college at the time. I would party, drink, and smoke a little bit of pot on the weekends, but it was kind of your average kid that used substances a little bit, and most of my friends were that way. But yeah, no idea what was, going to be in the future for me.
Before Colin's drug use started, he was a rising star in the professional wakeboard and snowboarding community.
It started pretty early, I think around 15 years old. I became sponsored at snowboarding, and by the time I was out of high school, I was a professional. And so yeah, I was competing on the weekends, traveling all over the state, up into Washington and California. So it was really something I was looking to pursue as a career as well.
Colin's introduction to prescription pain pills began after a back injury and eventually led to a heroin addiction.
And so when I got prescribed Vicodin at 17, I didn't think anything of it except that it was helping with the pain. By the time I had surgery at 18 years old on my back, the pain went away from the surgery, everything worked out, but I didn't realize that there was now this sort of dependence in my body to have those pills and how they would make me feel. And so after the surgery, they stopped prescribing me Vicodin and Percocet. And for the most part, I didn't feel like I needed it. I think I was young enough and kind of naive to what they did that I just sort of assumed the healing process from the surgery was more of what was going on in my body. But looking back, I'm able to realize that there was withdrawals from these pills too that I was kind of going through. And so by the time I was 19, 20, my back was healed up, and I kind of had this sort of in the back of my mind, this feeling that how the pills, these painkillers made me feel, not only were they killing the pain when I had been hurt, but they kind of gave me like a, sort of a euphoric feeling. And so it's something I was familiar with. And sort of what happened over the next 5-6 years was, from time to time, a friend might have an injury and have some of these pills, or I kind of started partying more, like drinking and smoking pot and being out with people. And, sometimes at parties and stuff, people would have, Vicodin or Percocet and these painkillers. And so we would take them recreationally just for the feeling you would get from it. And that kind of, it took a while before I started using them heavily again. It kind of was just more of a recreational thing. I thought it was fairly harmless. I thought, it's just fun, something to do here and there when they pop up. And so that went on for about 7 years.
At this point in his life, Colin's body was physically dependent on prescription painkillers. He describes this physical feeling.
So something that's really common among pill addicts and heroin addicts is a term called getting sick, and when I didn't have my drugs, I was sick. And probably the easiest way to describe it or give someone the feeling of what it is, the worst flu or cold or food poisoning you've ever had in your life doesn't have any kind of comparison to getting sick from the withdrawal of a pill or heroin addiction. When you start using these pills, it doesn't take long. I mean, it can be 2 or 3 weeks, and you are completely physically in need of it. And when you run out of the drug, within 12 to 24 hours, you are throwing up, vomiting, diarrhea. Physically, your whole body hurts. Your nose will be running. You're coughing. You literally get so sick that you can't move. You can't get to the bathroom. You can't drive. There's been times where a friend, like 2 of us might be together that were using at the same time, and we both ran out of the drugs. We were both so sick, even though we had the money to get more, that we couldn't get to the drug dealer's house to get more drugs because we were so sick we couldn't move and even get in the car and drive it. Even though we knew we'd feel better when we got there, you're so sick that you can't even move. And it's one of the ways I describe it, and a lot of people I know describe it, is that I wouldn't wish the sickness that you feel from the withdrawal of opiates on anyone. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, because it is such a miserable and painful place to be. And it doesn't go on for, it's not a 24-hour flu. It can go on for at least a week, if not 2 weeks, of being in excruciating pain.
Addicts at this point in their dependency will do anything to support their habit.
Both things I did to support my habit are really hard, to look back and realize that you did them. But initially, because I had had a career and built up some things, I just started selling off everything I owned. And each day you wake up and you tell yourself in your head that, oh, this will be the last day I have to sell something I own or care about to stay high and to keep this addiction going. But then you get high that day and you don't do anything to stop the addiction. So the next day you wake up and the next thing you thought to yourself you'd never sell or you'd never put a price on is out the door too. And so because I had a pretty good career and had a lot of possessions, it took a little while, but over the period of a year or two, slowly but surely everything got sold. I was down to my last kind of ratty skateboard, my last snowboard. Everything that you hold dear to you, you'll sell in a heartbeat when you need to. And so then once everything was gone, I couldn't hold a normal job either because, I had to stay high. So then I had to start stealing to support my habit as well. And, just various, it's when you're high, you kind of tell yourself are, small or minimal crimes, but they actually hold a lot of consequence to them. And so I started just getting involved in a lot of criminal activities. Initially it was mainly stealing from like department stores, stealing items and then trying to resell them. Then the other thing that I got into kind of probably towards the end of my addiction, which is really scary when I look back on it, because I've talked to people in law enforcement and in the legal system in general that have told me now what the consequences would have been had I gotten caught or something happened. But I started selling drugs, the heroin and stuff, to support my habit. And because I knew the people that used it, it didn't seem like I was doing that much harm at the time because I was using it as well. So I viewed it as, I'm not really a drug dealer. I'm just helping my friends get the drug they need as bad as I need it. And so I started selling heroin, to support my habit, which had I been caught doing that, I would have gone to jail or prison for a long time. But also, if I had sold that drug to someone that had overdosed from it, then the consequences go up significantly. So, I was, risking other people's lives, but also throwing my life away too.
Reflecting back, Colin's story highlights the dangers of prescription painkillers, but also shows how easy it is for people to cross self-imposed boundaries.
Just from my experience and from being a young kid back when I was in high school and junior high, I just remember thinking that I'd set boundaries for myself and I was never going to cross certain lines with drug use and alcohol. And it's so easy just to have one night of thinking you're doing something harmless, and all of a sudden you've crossed a line, and then that next line that you set for yourself is going to be that much easier to cross as well. For me, it went from I'm going to drink alcohol on the weekend to, I guess I'll smoke a little bit of weed, to, I've taken these pills for a pain injury. It can't be, they prescribe them. It's a legal thing. If you have a prescription, it won't hurt if I take this Vicodin tonight, to all of a sudden needing these pills every day and then having to not just take a pill but snort a pill, to smoking heroin, shooting heroin, stealing. It's not worth it. And despite what someone may tell you or convince you is going to be harmless, really think about how much you value your life and value the things you have in your life, because it can all be gone in what will feel like the blink of an eye. And it may be a few years, but that time will go by really fast and you don't get that time back. And that's, at the best outcome is that you'll get clean and find treatment. The worst outcome is you pass away and, that's it. That's the end of your story.
So what can we do to keep someone we care about safe from prescription drug abuse? Most importantly, store prescription medication in a safe, secure place.
We tell our kids from the time they're really small to not play with matches or lighters. And as parents, you keep those away from the kids, because if they find one, they're probably going to try it out. Try out the lighter. It's a tool, it's not a toy. We told the kids whole life. So we put the tools away, hide the matches, hide the lighters. Well, the prescription drugs are the exact same thing.
If you have a legal prescription, be aware of how much medication you possess and monitor the quantity to ensure that all medication is accounted for. Also, ensure that any unused prescription medication is properly disposed of once it is no longer needed. Be aware of physical indicators that might indicate prescription drug abuse. These indicators include sudden behavioral changes like unexplained anger outbursts, lack of focus, becoming withdrawn, or engaging in risky or criminal behavior. changes in sleep pattern or lack of concern for personal hygiene, unexplained weight changes and changes in energy level, or lack of interest in activities or hobbies that once provided motivation can also be clues. Also, people who demonstrate a lack of caring for the natural consequences of their actions, including damaging valued close relationships, might also be showing indications of prescription drug abuse. As a final message, Penny Whips, whose son Kyle struggled with prescription drug use and eventually died of a heroin overdose, shares her story, hoping it will inspire others who know someone who is abusing prescription drugs or engaging in similar dangerous choices to break their code of silence and get their friend or loved one help.
911.
Hello?
Where are you right now?
I am standing in the basement with a kid that has a purple face that I do not believe has a pulse.
Okay, how old is this kid?
This kid is probably 22.
And he's unconscious and not breathing.
I don't believe that he is breathing at this point.
Kyle was found in a home in southeast Portland, and he was staying with a friend's house, at a friend's house, who was renting a room from someone.
Kyle overdosed while using drugs with a group of friends. While Penny acknowledges her son's responsibility in his own unintentional overdose, she is also aware of just how strongly young people are influenced by their friends.
I think as I look back and see, Kyle had two groups of friends. He had a group that he hung out with, and once in a while I would do what I would call dangerous living, making choices that weren't healthy or beneficial to him. And then he had another group of friends that they did similar things, music and hiking and talking about the future, but drugs or alcohol was not involved. And when I say alcohol, I mean excessive alcohol was not involved with that group of kids or students. And it was with the kids that he occasionally lived dangerous with, was the night where he died, where he was surrounded by those kids. And I think sometimes friendship is such an important thing. It's very strong, especially in high school, junior high and high school. And there were several conversations that I had with Kyle about this particular friend, and said, you may have to walk away from him. And he flat out, Mom, I won't walk away from him. He's my friend, and I'm going to be there for him. And I just, in some way, sometimes friends can be your Achilles heel. You know, it's something that if you're not willing to walk away from it, if it's unhealthy, it can have a life-altering, effect on your family and you.
Kyle's death left a permanent void in Penny's life. She works to ensure others don't experience a similar pain by promoting a message that encourages young people to step out of their comfort zone and seek help for a friend or loved one who is engaged in dangerous living.
If you're somebody out there who's living dangerously and you're being influenced more by your friends than you're influencing them for good, maybe it's time to consider a change. And then if there's somebody out there who's not living dangerously, they don't have any intention of ever doing something dangerous, but they know somebody who is and they're keeping their secret, it's time for them to break the code of silence in order to get their friends help.
When trials come and life gets hard, and when a human heart gets torn apart, do you show the world that your faith is strong, or do you let yourself be weak? And when it hurts so bad that you can't think straight, when the loneliness will make you break, do you hang it up just to watch it fall? 'Cause your heart's so heavy the wall won't hold. Well, don't get lost in a sea of faces searching for their way home, 'cause I'm still here in the same place that I've been waiting all along. Come back to me. to